Happy African History Month. It's day 8 of our African history video series. And today I wanted to just do a quick recap of what we've done so far. I noticed yesterday it was actually raining, so you could kind of hear that was kind of interfering with the sound yesterday. And I think it was Friday. Yeah, the sound was, the light was low. So yeah, I'm working the kinks out, getting used to what to pay attention to, what to modify, what to make sure, that the video is of good quality, the sound is of good quality. Yeah, I'm working these things out. But thank you for being here to watch the video. So yeah, just today's day 8. So 7 days. We've already had topics. We started out with an introduction. Why am I calling it African History Month instead of Black History Month? Because Black History Month is what's being called as, is like a placeholder for African American History Month, which is ridiculous. Because what is an African American? The United States of America is what, 200 and I should know this. 76, 30, 76, yeah. So it's about 240 years, 242 years old. Our history goes back further than 242 years. And if you want to start at 242 years ago, where does Black or African American history start? As a slave. So if you're saying, if this is what you're trying to spotlight, this is where you began as slaves. Now you work at McDonald's. It's like anything compared with that metric, anything is success. Working for $10 an hour at McDonald's, or $7.25, elsewhere in the country, at McDonald's is success, because you're not a slave anymore, and that's ridiculous. The metric, the bar of success for us has got to be set higher. We've got to strive for more. We've got to compare ourselves to better, and we've got to realize that we are worth more than just not celebrating that we're not slaves anymore. And I like that Robert Patillo, I think earlier this week I may have referred to him as Joshua Patillo. I don't know why I did that. But Robert Patillo actually echoed these very same sentiments, in that this watered down version of history is like it's somebody else picking and choosing who they think is safe for Black people to celebrate and to look up to. And I like the analogy he used, because he says the people that are putting together these curriculums for Black History Month are people who identify with the villains of this story. He says it's like watching Star Wars as told by Darth Vader, as told by he used Darth Vader, but yeah, imagine Star Wars as told by the Emperor. It's a completely different movie, but this is the history that we're expected to celebrate. This is the version of history, the watered down history, that we're expected to celebrate. Individuals who identify with and with the villains of the story, the oppressors, and are trying to minimize the extent of the crimes and atrocities committed against us and their role in it, which is the role. And what appropriate response should be for that. These are all things that are obscured in the current watered down Black history conversation. But yeah, that was the introduction. So what I'm dealing with in African History Month is talking about African history. We extend beyond the shores of North America. We go back further than, 242 years. So these are things I want to touch on, deal with, and used to inspire. Several of the other things we've talked on was trivia. Michael Jordan, scoring 100 points, or Kobe scoring 100 points, Michael Jordan playing with the flu. That's not Black history, that's trivia. Jackie Robinson, yes, the day that Jackie Robinson was accepted by white people, that's trivia. That's trivia and trivial. That is not something I'm going to focus on as a point of success of when racist white people finally said, you know what? We're willing to exploit you and allow you to make us rich. That's not a point of success. That's not that's not something to be celebrated, and we've got to be smarter than that. So that's not what I'm going to be talking about. If I'm talking about sports figures, it'll be in historical context, in historically relevant context, in terms of somebody like Muhammad Ali, who did not just box, he took stands on issues. And that's something that even today is so important, so vital, and such a great lesson for us to learn. Days of Black History past. Oh, I spoke about how some of the things we did and how this all started when I was inside. I remember I started at a federal prison in North Carolina where we had just a 1 day like an event celebration, and they wanted content, so I did a poem, and my poem was like very different from the tone of the rest of it because they were celebrating Black History Month, African American History Month. And my poem was like, no, our history goes more than 400 years back. This is not about, sports stars and stuff like that. There's more serious stuff, much better things and individuals we could be focusing on than such sports stars. Then I also spoke about how we actually, when I was in a federal prison in Massachusetts, how a staff member, was just so happy that they had, gotten some materials to give to us, which were coloring books. He gave a room full of grown federally convicted prisoners coloring books and lollipops, and was so pleased with himself, and we lit into him, and that's how we actually wound up taking over the entire program. And we were doing it, we wanted to do it 7 days a week, but the education building wasn't even open 7 days a week, and so we had to schedule. But yeah, we were doing it multiple days a week. We'd have classes, and we do this throughout the entire month, which is what inspires me to do this now, where I want to bring every single day. I want to be doing a video on African history. And then Harriet Tubman, who is a real life Black superhero. And yeah, I would love to see a movie about her, because seriously, what she went through, the risks she put herself at, how many people she saved. Because just talking about the Underground Railroad is like an abstract concept, but when you realize that she got out, she was free and clear. And then she said, you know what? I'm going to go back and save some others. And I'm going to keep going back. She kept going back, putting herself in the line of fire. She was ready to go to war and join forces with John Brown to wage war on slave owners. This woman was a beast. She was truly dedicated to freeing, and freeing Black people and undoing this injustice. And it would be nice if we could see examples of that, many more examples of that today. I mean, it's not that they're not out there, but those aren't necessarily the people that are being pushed by the mainstream media, and propped up in front of us. So I think that's something we need to look at. We need to look for people who truly have that self-sacrificing character, who are truly committed to a cause and will stop at nothing to see, injustice undone. Brings us to Denmark Vesey, another individual who actually gave his life in this fight, of trying to stop these oppressors. He had managed to get himself free. Once again, there's somebody who was already free himself, but said that's not enough. It's not enough for me to make it. I've got to help them. He put together a plan to wage a war on slaveholders and slave owners. And unfortunately, he was unsuccessful. People ratted him out. They arrested him, and 35 individuals, 35 people were killed, murdered as a result of being part of, his plan to, including himself, to overthrow this crime against humanity. Then we talked about MAFA. MAFA. It's a term to encompass the African Holocaust, and I think that's important because we can't let the scope of these crimes against humanity be diminished, be minimized, and just be, confined to slavery, because it extended further than that. This was a concerted effort to destroy a people, to subjugate a people, to psychologically murder a people, to rob us of all self-respect, of all dignity, so that we would become nothing more than tools, the beast of burden, that can then, the powers that be could then use to for their to achieve whatever aims they wanted. And this happened across the country, across the globe. You've got the Haitians, you've got the Caribbean, you've got the South America, you've got the Africa, where these crimes and atrocities were taking place. So the MAFA is an all-encompassing name for the African Holocaust. And then yesterday we talked about Black Wall Street, because crucial in any discussion about improving the Black community, healing from this trauma, and building something so that our communities can thrive, that are we can stop a lot of the negativity and the foolishness that's happening inside of our communities, and to rebuild it's going to take economic empowerment has got to be part of the discussion. And Black Wall Street, the early 1900 Black community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is an example that it's possible, and it was possible then. So it's much more possible now. So we need to start coming together. We need to start building. We need to start being economically cooperative within the Black community. And then we will be able to build up our communities and better relate to other communities. It's not about shunning other communities, but it's about being able to deal with other communities on equal footing. That's the key to the success of our community, and where it's not going to be an issue of exploitation and having to have bad blood exist because we feel exploited. Where if we're coming to the table with our own means of production, our own means of our own ownership, our own means of finance, and then it enables us to have better discussions, more fruitful discussions, and better relationships with each other and with other communities as well. And so that's a recap of what we've done so far. We're going to be reaching out, branching out to other historical figures that aren't normally, because some of these historical figures or events may seem somewhat familiar, sound somewhat familiar, but we're going to be going to ground that may not normally be dealt with in this month, in the days and weeks to come. So thank you for joining me today on the 8th day, and I will see you tomorrow. Happy African History Month.